Hello, and welcome to week 3 of my journey. I hope this is recording fine. Um, as you know, I've left London and traveled to the very cute town called Bewdley. And this is the puppy Birdie who we've been looking after. And she is very cute. And that tongue hanging out just makes you just want to hug her. So hopefully you can see everything on the screen, and I'm going to get going. This week has been quite a eventful week, I could say that. Some very positive and some a little tricky. Um, I'll talk about them as we come along. So the piece that I've put at the front is actually my artwork. So this week, Lisa and I went to an art class. Lisa has a lovely friend called Hilary who runs an art class here in Bewdley. And we did some art, which was so lovely to do. I spent a whole day basically doing art, which is a very big splurge, I think, for anyone to spend a whole day doing something that's lovely. So what it helped me, as well as this week helped me know that you don't know what you're capable of until you try it. And so again, doing something different for me this week was trying this art class. And then throughout that, it helped me understand that you can learn so much from other people. And being part of a group is something I've always loved being, whether it's at work or at sport or just having lots and lots of friends in my life. But to know that we're all here to help each other out, and even the little things, as I've been saying across the few weeks, doing little things to support each other. But one thing also this week reminded me is that we all need to clarify our vision. And visions don't necessarily mean, financial and or your future, but it can be just reminding ourselves of little things as we go along. So those messages came to me across this week. So I wanted to show you firstly, before I left London, I got to go to see the Globe Theatre, which is a reconstruction of Shakespeare's theatre by a man whose name is eluding me. Anyway, this man helped raise all the money. It was his passion to get the Globe Theatre up and running again. So it's the third version of Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. The theatre itself is all constructed in the same way that it was in Shakespeare's time. Obviously, back then, it was a different world, and we got to hear. I did an amazing walking tour sort of through the building, and she told us all about so many different things about the life of that time and who used to go to the theatre, and that the theatre was really not necessarily for the posh people, but everyone was allowed to come along. But if you were in the standing front area, which you can sort of see where the people are standing in the bottom left-hand corner, that was like 2 pennies to get in. And so that was where all the poor people stood. But they could only stand, I think, about 300 people from memory. Um, but they squeezed everyone in, and you went in and you had to stay there the whole day to get your spot. So they used to cover the floor with straw and stuff to soak up all the pee, because they would feed them alcohol, because you would drink alcohol because you couldn't drink the water. And so by the end of the day, when the shows were coming on, everyone was so drunk and they would just not want to lose their spot. So they would just pee on the floor. So it wasn't a very nice spot to be. So obviously the wealthier people were up in the stands, and they paid more money as they sort of went up. In behind the stage, there was areas that the very, very wealthy people went, and that was so that not that they could see the stage, because they were actually looking at the back of the people, but so that they could be seen, because if you were up the top, it was obviously costing you a lot of money, and therefore you were very wealthy. Right up in the top of the building, there's an attic, and that's where they made the noises that went with, like thunder. They said they'd roll cannonballs around the floor and things like that. So that was up in the top. And apparently, in the day, Shakespeare would go onto the stage, but he would actually not play the major roles. He'd often play the narrator type role. And what happened when the second one burned down was they had this great idea that they would fire a cannon out of the building at the top. And of course, because it has a thatched roof, the building caught on fire and burned down, but no one was killed. Everyone got out. But now, apparently, even though they've got the thatched roof, they've got to have very impressive sprinkler systems to keep it from catching on fire. So then the picture of in the middle at the bottom is a actual book of Shakespeare's plays, and I think the date is 10. Oh, I can't remember exactly, but it's in the 10th century. I should have written that down. Um, and I did 1623. That's right, 1623. So that's pretty old when you think about Australian history. And the books are very, very rare. There's only 235 sets that they know surviving in different sorts of levels of conditions. And this is one that was at the Globe Theatre. And one just recently sold for 10 million US dollars. So it's a very important book too. And it has plays in there that, don't get performed, that are probably historically, important, but we don't know a lot about them. So after this, right beside where the Globe is, which is on the Thames River, there's the Tate Gallery. And I've got a picture there, and I hope you can see it without my face being in the road. But the Tate Gallery is in this huge warehouse. I think it's 6 stories high of actual parts of the gallery. And then there's a huge chimney stack that goes right up, and there's a cafe at the top. But unfortunately, it was closed when we were there. I was grateful because I don't do heights. Again, if any of you know me, I am not a heights person. And so we couldn't go up to the cafe, but it's something I want to go back and see more of. I didn't put any pictures of the art in there, but it's a modern gallery. However, I did find that there was art that I loved because I tend to be a traditional art lover, but I did find some amazing artworks in there, and I need to go back and have another look. And for Tracy, who accompanies me to the Sydney or Australian Art Gallery in Sydney, I don't know which one it's called, could be called the National. We go the same art gallery every time I'm in Sydney just because I love wandering around art. So that at the bottom is Regent Street, I believe, again. And we went on a journey along Regent Street on a bus. So it wasn't a hop on, hop off bus, and it cost us something like £2 to do this trip because Lisa wanted to go and see something special. Now, on the left-hand side of the screen, you will see some things that were sites around London. One of them you may know. I did not know where it was, but Lisa did. And so we got on this bus to travel all the way to that pedestrian crossing. And for those of you who are in the know, you will know why that pedestrian crossing is important. I had no idea. Anyway, I was not going to stand in the middle of the road and take my photo, but there were people there when we were there taking their photo on that crossing. You can look it up and find it out if you don't know what it's about, or you can ask me in the comments. What was interesting about the heart of where we stayed at Waterloo at the Wellington pub at Waterloo, and it was an amazing pub that's been redone. And apparently the Wellingtons are doing up a series of pubs around the world, I believe, but definitely in England. And it was right at the heart near Waterloo Station. But when you went out the door, there's obviously, huge sky-rise buildings and there's trains and everything. But we found these most amazing gardens and this tiny little house that's been left. So what they seem to have to do is obviously keep the facade like in Australia, keep the facade and then change the back. But the beautiful creamy coloured roses, peachy coloured roses at the top left were in the gardens of this Arms house. Now, Arms as in ALMS, not ARMS. and they were constructed for, it's like a whole set of little buildings, and they've been now allowed for people from men, I believe, mostly, who live in them, but they used to be for the mariners and where the mariners lived when they, got very old and couldn't work in the river, they were given these places by some wealthy um, merchants. And so they're all around, apparently, all around in London. So then we moved on and we went to Bewdley. We had to catch two trains and a bus, I think, from memory. And it took us all up like half a day to get there. Bewdley is on the River Severn, Severn, which is a very, very long river. And if you look it up, it runs, we're up near the Shropshire Hills and just above Worcestershire and just to the west of Birmingham. So it's up in the country. And there's our friend Birdie. She's having a nap, which she liked to do on the couch beside us. And so Bewdley is a lovely little town, very quirky, but had enough of everything, but had some funny things that I saw as I was walking around. I liked the fact that they built a brewery in a boys' school. I thought that was quite appropriate. And then for my friend Katie, I found this hairdressing salon called Katie's Hairdressing Salon, which reminded me of her. And then down the bottom is the Foundry. The Foundry is what was an old foundry, and now they've made it into like an art centre. And then out the back, there's these beautiful gardens. And this is where we did our art. So they had quirky little, all different little booths inside this foundry where people could bring their crafts and their wares and actually sell them out of this beautiful central hub, which I thought was such a lovely idea. I'm hoping this is working because it looks like it's buffering on my screen. So I'll show you more about the art. I'll tell you more about the art side of it when I get to the art images because we went there and we booked in. So we booked in to go the following day. We had one sunny day, so we got out and went to, this is Ludlow. Ludlow is a very wealthy city. It's been around, the history of these buildings is just unbelievable. But we did an amazing walking tour with this wonderful lady called, I'm going to say Margaret, but it could be Barbara because that's my memory. But she did, like, it was over an hour and a half that we walked around the town and we looked at all the different architecture mainly and got the history of the streets. And she pointed out this lovely cafe that had now been put into an old building, and it cost them somewhere in the vicinity of £3 million to do up this building. And that it just, I guess it blew me away the the length of time these buildings have been operating and the fact that they're still able to be done up. And you can't really see fully what I'm showing you on the right-hand side there, but that's actually a stuffed rooster. And apparently, in the back streets, they used to have cockfights and, there were the seedier sides of town. But at the castle, at Ludlow Castle, was a royal spot for the kings to come to. And in the War of the Roses, because of where it's situated, it became a central hub. Um, some famous people went there, or all the famous kings were hanging out there. Richard, I think, went there, and there's so much story. If you want to look up, it's a market town, and it had one of the biggest markets. It went from like the top of the street to the bottom. The housing, I'll show you some of the housing. That's Tudor style with the white and timber. And then there's Victorian style there on the right in the brick. So all around this town there was Georgian, all different periods of architecture, which I love finding out about how they did things and how they maintained them. So this is again still in Ludlow. it shows, she talked about the different styles of bricks and how the bricks tell us what era the houses were built in. And for me, what was fascinating was that they tried to pretend that they were different sort of styles to make them, appear that they were wealthier than what they really were. But just even that's in the churchyard, obviously, on the right-hand side, but just in one building, there can be different eras of construction, and they're, of course, all wonky and, they're not stable. So people actually, again, like in Italy, I know, are struggling to get the money to renovate these buildings. And so often, because they're grade one listed, and I think Ludlow had 11 grade one listed buildings and something like a couple of hundred listed buildings, which just shows the importance of this it's a city. I really loved it. It was a beautiful place to visit. I'm so glad I went there. This is called Tenbury Wells, and apparently back in the day, people would go there because the wells were there, the springs were there. But it was the most unusual building I think I've seen in a really long time because the roof is actually made out of metal and it's got spikes. Inside, when we went there, Lisa and I went sort of late one night because, again, the sun doesn't go down till 9 o'clock. So we went out for a drive. We've hired a car for a couple of days. And just as we were getting there, these people were coming out and they'd had a historical society meeting in the buildings. So another very quirky little spot to go to. Now, I took this panorama view from Clee Hills, and so I guess I'm trying to remember like how to describe where we are, but we've been around a lot of different places. And when you watch Escape to the Country like I do, you hear of all these things and you hear of Shropshire, and that's where we are, but we're in the Shrewsbury Hills, and that looks out across the plains. Just it was very cold because again, like I said, we're at 8:30 in the night and we're looking out, and the weather's a lot like Melbourne. 1 minute it's raining, 1 minute it's sunny, um, and then we decided to stop and take a photo. I tried to put my videos in, but my video is not working, so I don't know um, how I'm going to do that. But I've got some videos. Hopefully, I'll post them on WhatsApp and you can have a look at them on WhatsApp. So this is now we've gone to the Iron Bridge. Oh gosh, I'm going to say it starts with T, but it's not Tenbury. Trenton, maybe. And this Iron Bridge is one of the oldest bridges that made of iron. And the guy that did it, and I might pause it. I might try and find his name. Hang on a second. I need to find his name. Trenton. Trenton. It's called Trenton. Telford. Okay, so it's called Telford. Oh no, wait on. What am I doing? I'm still doing this recording. Oh gosh, I don't want to stop share. I want to pause and I want to. Oh my gosh, I hope this isn't mucking around with my recording. All right, well, that was a bit of a hiccup. So, I can't believe that that's where what I was doing. Anyway, this is Ironbridge, and it is actually a beautiful, tiny little place, but the ironwork was incredible. And that bridge is dated, I think we worked out 1750 something. So that the guy of Trenton, I believe, was famous all around for his iron construction. And these are lots of little iron villages that are around where we are. Lots of little different ones that are. So there's so many different villages. That was the dilemma that we had. I couldn't really show you all of them, and every one of them has something different. So I tried to put some images together coming up that I'll show you, and hopefully um, that will tell you more about what we've been seeing. So here is me in the art gallery. So when you walk into this old foundry that has lots of rooms off to the side that have been reused and redone, and it's such a quirky idea. I guess in Lismore they're trying to do it with our art hub as well. And Hilary is the artist. She's been doing it for, I believe it's around 20 years that she's been running these art classes. And so the weird thing was when I walked into this building and we walked down towards the back, there was like this amazing cafe that we had some beautiful homemade food that was delicious and coffee that was delicious. The British are getting very good at coffee. I've got to tell you, it's getting better. And many people at the cafes that I went to weren't drinking tea, were drinking coffee. But when I walked through this area, we walked around and it's like a museum as well. And there was this one place where the stocks were. And the story was up on the wall telling you about, people being held in the stocks and what the purpose of them was. And back in the day, the police force was actually just a local police force. They weren't, it wasn't a national thing. And so the other thing that we did, we went into this side room and Lisa was reading the sign, and the sign said something like, children as young as 12 years old were hung for their crimes, were held in this room and hung for their crimes. Now, I I walked out of the room and we then started walking through the gardens, and all of a sudden I got this really overwhelming feeling of being sick to my stomach, and my skin went all prickly and awful. And I don't know if you believe in things, but something happened to me in that space. And the reason I'm telling you is that when we went back to do the art class the next day, I had to walk through the same area, and it doesn't happen straight away, but just after I leave the area, it is this awful feeling and of dread, and I don't know what it is. But one of the other ladies in the art class said there are apparently, 11 ghosts or something that haunt this foundry. And I don't know if you believe it, but I certainly got this physical reaction to something that was present in this building. So what we did was we were given some paper, and we were given a great big long stick that was about at least a meter long, and it was just a piece of cane, and we had to draw without taking control of what we were drawing. And there was a vase of flowers on the table, and we were to draw using this stick with whatever we wanted attached to the end, and I used charcoal. To draw the image that we could see. And it was such a weird thing. And apparently someone, I think it was Matisse, used to draw like this because you get a different image than you're trying to be perfect. And it was an interesting lesson to learn. So that's my image of the vase of flowers. Um, on the right, we were allowed to color it in, but I didn't actually want to add a lot of color to mine. They were peonies. They were white peonies with a little yellow center, was the vase that we were drawing. And then we had to decide what we did next. And so I really wanted to try and capture the roof line. Lisa and I both love chimneys and the roof line. And I think if you watched last week's video, you'll know I talked about the chimneys in Hampton Court Palace, where Henry VIII had all his wonderful chimneys. And so I took a photo of the back of the buildings in Bewdley, and then I used chalk to come up with my image. I was really proud of it, and I must be grateful to Hilary for helping me with lots of clues on how to make it work. But it really was just such a valuable thing to do, to try and just let yourself enjoy something, but it didn't have to be perfect. but I want to do much more art. It's something now I've decided I'm going to do as a way of teaching me that things don't have to be perfect. You can do them, and you can do them a bit rough, and then amazing things come out of how you do your art. So here are two very busy images, but again, the flowers, I can't get away from the flowers because again, here it's in London, it's in England, it's summer, and the flowers are everywhere. And these are all pelargonians, if you want to call them correctly, on the left, except for um, the what I would call hollyhocks, but I think they're called something else down the bottom. But the rest of them are these amazing geraniums that have been bred by this garden that we went to. And again, I can't remember the name of the garden. It's got some Croft name at the end. But what we had done was Lisa and I, Lisa's a good collector of brochures. And so we decided that we would go and do this black and white house tour. Again, they're Tudor style, all around these tiny little villages. And so most of those images that you see are from these tiny villages that we went to, but some are also from Shrewsbury. We went to Shrewsbury, hard to say when you're in a hurry. We went to Shrewsbury yesterday, and again, these towns you hear about when you're watching Escape to the Country or you hear about things happening, you just can't actually believe how cute they are when you get there. And so I took lots and lots of photos. And one thing I'll tell you is they all stick out from the street. So the street layer is thinner than the above. And apparently that's because they were charged taxes based on the floor print of the house that on the ground. So to make themselves have more space, they built out from the buildings as they went up. And so that's why you see all these buildings with these weird overhanging wobbly bits nowadays at the top because they didn't want to pay taxes. So I think that's very smart. We thought that was smart. So now this is more of Shrewsbury. What was interesting there was that the churches were made of these red bricks, which I hadn't really seen much before. So obviously the iron in the stone around that area is still predominant. And so lots of buildings were made out of the red sort of bricks. And I would assume that that church has been built onto um, as it's gone through the years. And Shrewsbury has a central market area. And again, for those of you, if you watch Escape to the Country, I remember that that's where the markets happened. And there were markets still happening there when we were there. And we bought some delicious olives and some bread. That's amazing. And the museum, which is what is on the left with the Tudor ceiling, the museum and art gallery were free to get into and had the quirkiest collection of things I've seen from um, local history around the crops and the plants and the clothes and things they wore to actual skeletal bones of woolly mammoths. And they had them in, and with the story about how the caveman type people would catch the woolly mammoths to eat them. So fascinating things that you find out when you go into these places and look at the quirky things that are going on. So I wished I could find the name of this place again, because this is where we went to today, and we had a beautiful brunch. After we'd done all the Tudor houses, we only had the car till 1 o'clock. And so we went and had brunch at this lovely um, Croft house plus gardens. And if you look at the WhatsApp group, you'll see some other photos of this house as well. But this is for my friend Tracy to show her the bees. Everywhere I'm going, I'm seeing bees. And so I took some photos of this amazing place that we had morning tea at. So that's actually the end of my week. I have been so busy with Lisa. This is my final week with Lisa. Then I'm going to Ireland, and Lisa's going to Ibiza to her gorgeous son Gus's wedding. And so I'm so thankful that Lisa's been here driving me around. I can't even say I've been navigating that much. I try to help out because sometimes Google takes you down these weird roads and you end up, we had to push the mirror in on one street that we went to in Ironbridge. So we've been having a wonderful time, and I'm so grateful to have friends that I've got. So I wanted to talk to you about what happened because things go wrong when you're traveling. Um, Something that happened this week that I thought I would tell people about if you're going to travel and you want to hire a vehicle. Um, we went to hire our vehicle, and as we were standing there, the guy said to Lisa, "Do you have your license?" And she said yes, and she pulled out her plastic license from Australia. Now, I didn't realize that you need to have your physical plastic license with you. And of course, I don't have that. I've got an electronic version of my license and I've got my international driver's license as well. But to hire a vehicle, you need to have the plastic card that you have to carry around in your wallet. Why in this day and age with AI and whatever, we still have to have those plastic cards? I don't understand. However, I can't hire a car unless I have it. So, being that it was Friday when we hired the vehicle, and I had to work out how on earth I'm going to get my license sent to me because I can't hire my car in Ireland unless I have my license. So I have called on my beautiful friends again, and my wonderful friend Chris has sent me my license, which I hope arrives at some point. I just hope it arrives. So I'm now going to Ireland next week I've had to cancel my car and I have to pivot and try and work out what to do next. So I'm going to catch a bus and I'm going to hang around Cork, which is where I'm arriving. And then Lisa has contacted her friend who lives just outside of Cork, and we've posted my license to her house. And I'm going to meet her hopefully next week. Fingers crossed, Australia Post, please do your job and get it there fast because we've paid like $50 to send it over. And then I can hire a car for the remaining time that I have in Ireland. But it just goes to show you that sometimes you think you've got everything organized and you don't. So calling on the people around you is a lesson that I'm learning. Those that know me will know that trusting is not something I do lightly. I have a smaller and smaller group in my life of people that I trust. However, it is important to let people help you. And so with my messages that I've got from this week, it's learning to um, allow yourself the freedom to do different things and the freedom for things to go wrong. So I want to just remind you to find something that allows you to be creative, whatever that is in your life, and bring you joy. So sometimes we get stuck in the day-to-day, grind of doing what we're doing, and we need to step back and think, okay, what am I going to do to get myself out of this? I can't keep just focusing on the negative. You need to put your energy into the positive and put your energy into the future that you want. And taking that energy away and the power away from that negative can often be through the people around you and talking with them and asking for their help and advice. And that's what I've learned this week, that I like to be organized. I like to have all my plans done and everything perfect. And yet, when you do art or in life, things are going to change, and you have to be able to trust that the journey that you're on is going to work out, whatever that's meant to be. And I just do want you all to be having such a wonderful life, whether that's in your career. As you know, my passion about careers is that we all have a job that we love. But just also, if your life is getting you down, to make sure you do something creative and positive that brings into your heart something that lights your fire. And I will look forward to talking to you next week. I will get back to you from the wonderful Green Island, wherever I might be. Hopefully, I will definitely have internet. And I'm sorry about the bump in the middle. I don't have any editing tools or skills, so you'll just have to zip through that wonky bit in the middle. Lots of love to all of you, and I'll talk to you again next week.